Harper Lanes was already 5 minutes late, her heels clicking desperately against the sleek marble floor of a downtown Manhattan skyscraper, as she whispered apologies to no one in particular. Her hair was frizzing from the summer humidity, her blouse was sticking to her back, and she was pretty sure one of her pantyhose had a run, but the email said urgent temp position. And she needed this job, desperately. She stopped in front of the 28th floor reception desk, trying to catch her breath as she spoke to the sharply dressed assistant behind it. "Hi, I'm Harper Lanes. I'm here to interview for the executive assistant temp position." The assistant barely looked up. "You're late." "I know." "I'm so sorry. The subway stalled between stations. Mr. Rhodes doesn't usually wait," the woman said, standing and grabbing a folder. "But he's making an exception. Lucky you." Harper blinked. "Mr. Rhodes," the woman gave her a tight smile. "The CEO, come on." Her stomach flipped. "Wait, the CEO of Rhodes Global. The same Rhodes Global that owned half the tech patents in North America." She thought she was just interviewing for a desk job, not sitting in front of a billionaire. The woman led her down a hallway lined with abstract art and floor-to-ceiling windows, finally stopping in front of a heavy glass door. "Good luck," she said flatly, then pushed it open. The office was massive. Chrome, clean lines, and a view that made Harper feel like if she leaned out the window, she'd touch the clouds. And behind the desk, finishing a phone call with a quiet "handle it," was a man who looked like he belonged on the cover of a business magazine. He stood, tall and broad-shouldered, in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His hair was dark and just slightly tousled, his jaw sharp, his eyes steely blue and piercing. Harper tried not to stare, but she failed a little. He glanced at her resume before looking up. "Harper Lanes, that's me." Her voice came out awkward and too bright, and she immediately hated herself for it. He nodded once. "I'm Orion Rhodes." Of course he was. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." She sank into it, gripping her bag tighter than necessary. He studied her, not just her resume, like he was trying to figure her out before she said a word. "You don't have a background in executive assistance," he said. "No," she admitted, "but I'm a fast learner and I've worked in admin before. I'm organized, reliable, and I can start today." "You're in school. Finished last month. You studied literature?" "Yes." She sat up straighter. "But I've worked 3 jobs through college. Temped at a dentist's office, ran admin for a small nonprofit, waitressed on nights. I know what it means to work under pressure." He didn't smile. "This position is high stress. My schedule is insane. I cancel things last minute. I travel often. I can be difficult." Harper folded her hands in her lap. "I can handle difficult." A pause. Then, "I need someone sharp. Not someone who'll cry because I forgot to say thank you." "I don't cry at work," she said, "and I don't need a thank you." Another pause. Then, surprisingly, he said, "You're hired. Start now." Harper blinked. "Wait, seriously, Anna will get you a temp badge and desk access. You'll shadow my current assistant until she leaves for maternity next week." She stood, a little stunned. "Thank you, I won't let you down." He looked at her for a beat longer than necessary. "We'll see." The first few days were a blur. Harper was thrown into a whirlwind of meetings, calls, schedules, and coffee runs that had to be exactly right black. No sugar, piping hot. Orion was demanding, precise, and always 5 steps ahead of everyone in the room. But he wasn't cruel, he didn't yell, he didn't belittle. He just expected perfection, and Harper wanted to give it to him, and he was watching her, not in a creepy way, but in a way that made her skin tingle. He'd glance at her when she entered a room, his eyes would flick to her when someone else spoke. When she handed him notes, his fingers lingered longer than necessary. It was subtle. But it was there, one afternoon, after a brutal meeting that left 2 board members near tears. Harper followed him down the hall with her notepad. "You were too hard on them," she said before she could stop herself. He turned. "Excuse me," she swallowed. "I just mean, maybe you could get better results if you didn't scare everyone half to death." "You think I scare people?" "I think you intimidate the hell out of them." His mouth twitched. "Do I intimidate you?" She held his gaze. "Not really." He stepped closer. "Why not?" Her heart pounded. Because I don't scare easy. There was a long, heavy silence between them. Then he said, voice low, good. That night, Harper stayed late to finish filing contracts. Just as she was shutting down her computer, her stomach growled loudly. She hadn't eaten since noon. Come with me, she turned. Orion stood in the doorway, jacket off, sleeves rolled to his elbows, looking far too casual for someone who usually treated his wardrobe like armor. Where? Dinner. I what? No, I mean I can't. I'm your assistant. He raised an eyebrow. You're a temp. That makes it worse. Harper. The way he said her name, it was soft and rough and made something spark in her chest. Just come to dinner. She hesitated, but she was starving, and he was looking at her like he wasn't used to hearing no, so she went. The restaurant was on a rooftop, lit with candles and soft golden lights. The skyline stretched around them, glittering and endless. This is not a normal dinner, she said when they sat down at a private corner table. He handed her a wine menu. It is for me, of course it was. Billionaire. Still, he didn't treat her like she didn't belong. He asked about her writing, her family, her dreams. He listened. Really listened. And when dessert came, he leaned in and said, You're different, she blinked. Different how? You're not impressed by any of this, he said, glancing around. Most people would be. I'm more impressed by people who are kind, she said quietly. He nodded slowly. I haven't always had time to be kind. Well, she said, smiling a little, maybe you should make time. He watched her for a beat, then murmured, Maybe I will. And for the first time, Harper wasn't just seeing her boss, she was seeing the man underneath. And she wasn't sure what scared her more, how much she liked him, or how much she already wanted him to like her back. The next morning, Harper arrived at the office before the sun had fully risen, her fingers curled around a paper cup she wasn't even drinking from. Her mind hadn't stopped racing all night. Orion had driven her back in a sleek black car with windows so tinted she'd felt invisible, and yet, with him beside her, she'd never felt more seen. She wasn't sure what last night had been. A dinner, a test, a step over a line she couldn't uncross. Morning, came a voice behind her. She turned quickly. Orion stood in the doorway of his office, his tie undone, cufflinks still in his hand. He looked less like a CEO and more like a man who hadn't slept but still carried himself like gravity bent around him. Morning, she said, brushing a piece of lint off her blouse just to keep her hands busy. You're early. You're barely dressed. I own the building, he said, walking past her. I can show up however I want. She followed him inside without thinking. Are you always this charming before coffee? He looked over his shoulder. You didn't answer my question. I couldn't sleep. He paused. Because of last night. I didn't say that. You didn't need to. He sat behind his desk and opened his laptop, but Harper knew he wasn't reading anything on the screen. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. His eyes were on her. I don't mix business with anything else, she said quietly. He leaned back. But you came to dinner. I was hungry, and you didn't really ask. I never do. There was a beat of silence, then Harper said, whatever that was, it can't happen again. Orion didn't argue, he didn't push, he just nodded once and said, understood. We have a conference call in 20 minutes, you'll be on it, she blinked. Me, why? Because I said so, and because I want you to start handling more than coffee runs. She crossed her arms. This isn't because of last night. No. It's because I need sharp people around me, and you haven't dropped the ball once. Harper didn't reply. She just nodded and left, her heart doing something it had no business doing. Later that afternoon, Harper sat across from the head of marketing as Orion spoke to a dozen executives from 5 different time zones. She took notes, but her eyes kept flicking to him, watching the way he commanded the room, even virtually. There was something magnetic about how he operated. Calm, firm, entirely in control. When the call ended, he turned to her. Thoughts? She looked down at her notepad. You're pushing the product launch too fast. The beta testing isn't complete, and your team is scrambling to make the deadline you set. They'll make it, or they'll crash trying. He studied her. You're not afraid to say things I don't want to hear. No, I like that. She stood. Don't. His voice was quiet. Don't what? Don't make this harder than it already is. I'm not trying to. She walked out before he could say anything else. That night, Harper went home to her tiny walk-up apartment on the edge of Brooklyn. The walls were thin, the radiator hissed like it was angry, and the neighbor's dog barked every time someone closed a door. She curled up on the couch with her laptop open, staring at a blank document that was supposed to be a short story submission but was currently just a blinking cursor and a whole lot of nothing. Her thoughts wouldn't settle. Not on her writing, not on work. Not on anything except the look in Orion's eyes when she told him to stop. He hadn't pressed. He hadn't even flinched. But there'd been something in the way he'd gone silent, something unspoken, like he knew too well what it meant to want something you couldn't have. The next day the office felt different, not colder, not overtly tense, just quieter. Orion didn't say much beyond what needed to be said. He didn't hover, didn't glance at her when she walked into a room. He was professional, distant, like a stone wall she'd accidentally helped build. And it bothered her more than she expected. By the end of the week, she'd memorized his schedule down to the minute. She anticipated his needs before he voiced them. She was efficient, composed, even when he barely looked at her during meetings. But that Friday, as she was gathering her things to leave, she heard his voice behind her again. "Come with me," she turned slowly. "Where?" He didn't answer, just held out a key card. "I need you to deliver something for me. It's sensitive." She hesitated. "Why can't someone else? Because I trust you." That shut her up. He handed her a slim envelope. "There's a car waiting downstairs. Give this to the man at the penthouse on West 72nd. No one else. Don't open it. Don't ask questions." She took the envelope. "You're not coming?" "No," she glanced at the card. "This is your personal driver's access code." He said nothing. She lifted her eyes to him. "You really trust me?" "I don't let anyone else near that address." It wasn't just trust, it was a test, one she didn't understand. She nodded once and left. The penthouse was unlike anything she'd ever seen. A high rise with a private elevator, a security guard who stepped aside the moment she gave her name. The door opened before she knocked. A man in his 50s stood there, dressed in a tailored suit, salt and pepper hair slicked back, eyes sharp and assessing. "You're not who I expected," he said. "I'm here on Mr. Rhodes's behalf." He took the envelope, opened it, read the contents, and gave a low whistle. "Well, that's bold." Harper didn't ask. The man tucked the paper away. "Tell him he's playing a dangerous game," she frowned. "What kind of game?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The kind where hearts get broken. And not always the ones you think." She left without saying another word, but the phrase echoed in her mind all the way back to Manhattan. Not always the ones you think. When she returned to the office, it was dark. Everyone had gone. Except Orion, sitting at his desk, tie gone again, jacket draped over the back of his chair. She dropped the key card on his desk. He didn't look up. "Did he say anything?" "Only that you're bold." His eyes lifted to hers. "That's one word for it." "What's in the envelope?" "Something I should have sent a long time ago." She waited. He didn't elaborate. "You said you trusted me," she said. "But you're still keeping things from me." "It's not about trust." "Then what is it?" He stood slowly, walked around the desk until he was in front of her. "It's about timing." "And is now the wrong time?" He didn't touch her, didn't breathe too close, but the air between them shifted. "I don't know yet," he said. And Harper realized something terrifying. Neither did she. Harper stood frozen in front of Orion, his words still hanging in the air like a held breath. "I don't know yet." For a man who always had answers, who calculated the future 6 moves ahead, uncertainty looked strange on him. She didn't push. Instead, she stepped back. "I should go," she said, voice steady. He nodded once, but didn't move as she left. Outside, the night was thick with summer heat. She took the subway home, her reflection in the darkened window staring back at her like a stranger. Something had shifted between them again, and pretending it hadn't would be impossible. The next morning, Harper arrived to a sealed envelope on her desk. No note, no explanation. Inside was an invitation, thick paper, navy blue, embossed with gold foil. Rhodes Global Charity Gala, formal attire required. She stared at it. She wasn't on the guest list. She was a temp. Anna passed behind her, arms full of binders. "You're going?" Harper held up the invite. "I wasn't aware I was invited." Anna barely blinked. "You are now. He only sends those to people he wants seen." Harper turned the envelope over in her hands. "Seen by who?" Anna raised a brow. "Everyone?" Harper didn't reply. By the time Saturday arrived, she was pacing the floor of her apartment in a floor-length black gown she'd borrowed from a friend in theater. The fabric clung in all the right places, and the slit up one side made her feel more exposed than she liked. She didn't own anything remotely close to designer, but the dress was elegant enough to pass. The car that pulled up wasn't a regular black car, it was a Bentley. The driver gave her a nod, opened the door, and said nothing the entire ride. The venue was a historic hotel in Midtown, decked in crystal chandeliers and velvet drapes. The ballroom shimmered with soft gold lighting, and everywhere she turned, someone wore a tuxedo or a gown worth more than her tuition had been. She kept to the edges, scanning for Orion. She found him at the center of the room, speaking to a cluster of men in tailored suits. He wore midnight black, his bow tie perfect, his posture relaxed in a way that screamed power. When he saw her, he stopped mid-sentence. His eyes tracked her across the room slowly, like he was trying to decide if she was real. When she reached him, he said nothing, just looked. "You invited me," she said, trying to keep her voice even. "Yes," she hesitated. "Why? I wanted to see if you'd come." "Why wouldn't I? You don't like this world. You don't know that. I know you don't belong in it." Her jaw tightened. "You're right, I don't, but I'm here anyway." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And you look like you were made for it." Before she could reply, a woman appeared beside him, tall, blonde, wearing a silver gown that looked sewn from starlight. "Orion," she said smoothly, touching his arm. "I've been looking for you." He glanced at her, then back at Harper. "Natalie, this is Harper Lanes." Natalie's eyes slid over Harper like she was a smudge on glass. "Your new assistant?" "Temporary," Harper said quickly. Natalie's smile didn't touch her eyes. "Of course." "I'll be back," Orion told her, then turned back to Harper. "There's someone I want you to meet." Before she could protest, he led her across the ballroom. "I'm not sure I'm comfortable with I'm not introducing you as my assistant," he said. She stopped walking. "Then what are you introducing me as?" He turned. "Someone important." Her heart stuttered. He brought her to a man with a sharp nose and a drink in each hand. "This is Charles Devlin," Orion said. "Investor, old family friend." Charles gave her a once-over, then offered one of the glasses. "You're not from here." "No," Harper said, accepting the drink and not sipping. "I grew up in Jersey," Orion added. "She's a writer." Charles's brows lifted. "Really? What kind?" "Fiction," she said. "Short stories, mostly unpublished." "That'll change," Orion said without hesitation. Charles looked between them, then said, "I see." He didn't say more, but his eyes said plenty. After a few more introductions, Harper found herself on the terrace, trying to breathe. The air was cooler out there, the city lights below stretching toward the horizon. "You handled that well," Orion said behind her. She didn't turn. "You should have warned me." "I didn't want you to say no." She finally faced him. "Everyone in there thinks I'm someone I'm not." "No," he said. "They're just seeing you through my eyes." She stared at him. "What does that mean?" His voice was low. "It means I haven't stopped thinking about you since you walked into my office." She looked away. "You're my boss, I know. There are rules." "I've broken worse." She let out a breath. "This isn't just about attraction." "You know that, right?" "I do." They stood there for a long beat, the city humming beneath them. "I don't want to be a secret," Harper said finally. "You wouldn't be." "I don't want to get used." "You won't be." "I don't want to be something you regret." He stepped closer. "You'd be the first thing I've ever done right." That silenced her. He didn't touch her, didn't push, but when she looked at him again, the wall between them was gone. "You don't make this easy," she whispered. "I don't want easy." Before she could respond, a man burst through the terrace doors, stopping short when he saw them. "Orion," he said apologetically, "there's a situation with the board. They need you inside." Something in Orion's expression shifted. "Now?" "Yes." He looked at Harper. "Stay here, I'll be back." She nodded. heart racing for reasons she couldn't name. Alone again, she leaned on the stone railing, trying to pull air into her lungs. She didn't know what had just happened, but it felt irreversible, and deep down she knew this wasn't just a crush. It was the beginning of something that could ruin them both. The soft echo of classical music followed Harper down the marble hallway as she stepped away from the terrace and back into the gilded ballroom, now buzzing with tension. Something had shifted in the air since Orion was pulled away, a subtle but unmistakable current of unease beneath the polished surface. She didn't see him anywhere. A staff member passed with a tray of champagne, and Harper accepted one without thinking. She didn't drink, not usually. But her hands were cold, and her heart was thudding like it didn't know whether it belonged to her anymore. Quite the evening. The voice came from behind her, low, male, unfamiliar. She turned. A man in a navy tuxedo with a white rose on his lapel studied her with a clinical sort of curiosity. He had a practiced smile, the kind that never reached his eyes. "I'm sorry, I don't believe we've met," she said. "No, we haven't, but you're hard to miss," he said. "I'm Julian Harrow, board vice chair," she tensed. "Nice to meet you." He sipped his drink. "You came with Orion." "I was invited," he tilted his head. "You're not like the others he brings around," her voice sharpened. "I wasn't aware he brought anyone around." Julian gave a hollow laugh. "He doesn't, that's why people are talking." Harper's stomach twisted. "I'm not here to cause problems." He took a step closer. "Then be careful, the people in this room play for keeps. You seem decent." She didn't answer. Something in his tone felt like both a warning and a threat. Julian walked away before she could say anything more. She found the exit and slipped into the quiet hallway, trying to shake the lingering discomfort. The moment she turned the corner, Orion stepped out of a side room and shut the door behind him. He looked like he'd been through a storm. His jaw was tight, his bow tie undone, and there was a crease between his eyebrows that hadn't been there earlier. "You left the terrace," he said. "I didn't know how long you'd be gone," he exhaled. "I'm sorry, the board's vote came early. I had to make a decision." "About what?" "Whether to take the company public," her eyebrows lifted. "I thought you weren't planning that for another year." "I wasn't," he said. "But someone forced the timeline." Harper folded her arms. "Who?" He hesitated. "Julian," she blinked. "I just spoke to him." "What did he say?" "That people are talking, and that I should be careful." Orion's expression darkened. "He's under the impression that I make decisions based on distractions. He's been trying to push me out of the majority vote for months." Her voice dropped. "And now he's using me." "He's trying." She stepped back. "I told you I didn't want to be a secret, but I didn't sign up to be a scandal either. You're neither." "Then tell me what I am." He stepped closer. His voice was quieter now, more raw. "You're someone I didn't expect. Someone who makes me question everything I thought I wanted." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have right now." She looked away. "I don't know how to exist in your world." "I don't want you to. I want you to exist in mine." "That's the same thing." "No," he said firmly. "It's not." She stared at him, waiting for more. "I've spent years building walls," he said. "Not just around the company, around everything. I stopped letting people in a long time ago, but you walked in like you owned the place and didn't even know it." Harper's voice softened. "You treat your emotions like business negotiations. Because business is the only thing I've ever been able to control." She reached for him then, her hand brushing his. "You don't have to control this." He looked down at their hands, then back at her. "I don't know how to let go." "Then let me teach you." He pulled her into him, not with urgency but with something steadier, a quiet decision. His hands settled against her waist, his eyes locked on hers. "I want you," he said. "Fully, publicly, permanently." She could barely breathe. "You're asking me for something you've never given anyone." "I know," he whispered. "But I'm not just asking, I'm offering it back." Before she could reply, his phone buzzed against his pocket. He ignored it, and then it buzzed again. "I have to check that," he said. She nodded. He answered with a clipped yes. His face shifted almost immediately. "What?" She stepped back, instinctively reading the change in his posture. "I'll be there in 10, he said, then hung up. "What happened?" They leaked the shareholder report, he said. It's gone public, she swallowed. Julian, almost certainly. What does that mean? It means I could lose everything. Harper followed him out of the building and into the waiting car. The driver didn't ask questions. The ride was silent until Harper finally asked, "What happens if the board removes you?" "I still own 40%, but I'd lose voting control. And the company would become everything I built it not to be cold, transactional, hollow. Can you stop it?" He looked at her. "Only if I prove they need me more than they resent me." As the car pulled up to the Rhodes global headquarters, Harper reached for his hand. "You're not alone in this." He looked at her, something unreadable in his eyes. Inside, the building was alive with tension. Executives crowded the boardroom table, some whispering, others staring at their phones. Julian sat near the head, calm, composed, smug. Orion walked in without hesitation. "I see you've all read the leak," he said. "Let's get this over with." Julian leaned back. "We're simply trying to protect the company." "No," Orion said. "You're trying to protect your control." Julian's smile was thin. "Your personal life has become a distraction. Then let's make it official." Orion turned to Harper, who stood at the doorway, stunned. "I'm stepping down as CEO," he announced. The room erupted. Julian's eyes widened. "You're what?" "I'm stepping down, effective immediately. But I'm appointing an interim CEO, someone who actually understands what this company stands for." Julian laughed. "You can't just handpick." "I can," Orion said. "According to the bylaws, I can appoint an interim with a 2/3 vote, and I already have the votes." Julian's face turned red. "And just so we're clear," Orion added, "I'm not leaving the company. I'm taking the Chief Innovation Officer role. I'll focus on the work. Let someone else steer the ship for now." Julian stood. "This is a stunt." "No," Orion said. "This is me finally choosing what matters." He turned to Harper, his voice steady. "You." The room fell into stunned silence. Orion crossed to her, took her hand, and said, "I don't care what they say. I don't care what it costs. I want you in my life. No more hiding. No more waiting." Tears blurred her vision. "You really just gave up your title for me?" "I didn't give up anything," he said. "I finally claimed something real." She stepped into his arms, her voice shaking. "So what now?" He pressed his forehead to hers. "Now I take you home. And tomorrow we start a life that's ours." Months later, Harper stood on the balcony of their new brownstone, a manuscript in one hand and Orion's arm around her waist. The city stretched before them, the same but different, and for the first time, Harper Lanes wasn't chasing stability. She was building forever with a man who gave up everything to have it with her. The first Monday after Orion stepped down, Harper woke up wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets and the warm weight of his arm across her waist. The city buzzed faintly beyond the windows of their new brownstone, but inside, everything was quiet, peaceful. She turned slightly, watching him sleep for a moment. His face was softer now, the tension that once lived between his brows finally gone. He looked younger, freer, like a man who had finally stopped running from his own life. "You're staring," he said without opening his eyes. "You're awake. Have been for a while, just didn't want to disturb you." His voice was gravelly from sleep, rough in a way that made her heart twist. "You're not disturbing me," she said, brushing his hair back from his forehead. "You're the only reason I slept." He opened his eyes now, and she saw something flicker in them, something that hadn't been there before. Gratitude, devotion, a quiet kind of awe. "You're still here," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." They stayed like that for a while, no meetings, no expectations, no one watching, just two people who had been through fire and somehow come out whole. By late afternoon, Harper found herself in the sunroom, curled up with her laptop open and her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Orion passed by with a plate of sliced mango and set it down beside her. "You've been staring at that screen for an hour," he said, leaning a hip against the windowsill. "I know. I've written the first line 6 different ways." He crossed his arms. "What's the story about?" She looked up. "A woman who thinks she's ordinary until someone treats her like she's anything but, and she starts to believe it." Orion tilted his head. Sounds familiar, she smiled. I'm trying not to make her too obvious. Let her be obvious. Some stories deserve to be told without hiding. She closed the laptop. I'm not hiding, I'm just adjusting. To what? To waking up every day and realizing I don't have to fight for everything anymore. He walked over and crouched beside her, brushing a thumb beneath her chin. You'll always fight, that's who you are, but now you don't have to do it alone. She cupped his cheek. I never thought I'd fall in love with someone like you, he kissed her palm. And I never thought I'd fall in love at all. That night, they hosted a dinner in the courtyard, just a few close friends from both their worlds. Anna brought a bottle of wine and teased Orion for finally learning how to laugh. Harper roasted vegetables and tried not to burn them. The mood was easy, full of stories and laughter and the kind of energy that only exists when people feel safe. Charles Devlin arrived late but brought a first-edition book of poetry for Harper and a bottle of Bordeaux older than her college degree. I hear you're writing again, he said as he handed it to her. I'm trying. Don't try, just do. The world needs more stories that don't end in bitterness. Later, as the guests filtered out and the fairy lights above them flickered in the breeze, Orion pulled Harper into a slow dance with no music. You're really not going back to the company? She asked, resting her cheek against his shoulder. I meant what I said. It's time someone else steered the ship. I spent 10 years building something that nearly cost me everything that mattered. Now I want to build something else. She pulled back slightly. Like what? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. Like this, he said, opening it. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, with a single diamond surrounded by a halo of tiny sapphires. It sparkled in the light like it had been waiting for this exact moment. I don't want to ask you to marry me because it's the next step. I want to ask because you're the first person I've ever wanted to build a life with. Because when I think about the future, I don't see boardrooms or headlines. I see you, I see us, she stared at him, shaking slightly. You're really doing this here, in the courtyard with tomato sauce on your shirt? He looked down, laughed, and shrugged. I panicked. I had a whole rooftop dinner planned next week, but I couldn't wait. She blinked back tears. You're serious. I've never been more serious about anything. She didn't hesitate. Yes, she whispered, her voice catching. Yes, Orion Rhodes, I'll marry you. He slid the ring onto her finger and the world tilted in the best possible way. She kissed him, long and deep and full of everything they hadn't been able to say until now. A few months later, they married in a quiet ceremony in the Catskills. No press, no spectacle. Just vows whispered under a canopy of trees, laughter shared over hand-picked wildflowers, and a kiss that sealed 1,000 unspoken promises. Harper wore a gown with a low back and soft lace sleeves, her hair pinned with tiny pearls. Orion wore navy, no tie, no cufflinks, just a grin that didn't leave his face the entire day. After the ceremony, they danced beneath paper lanterns and drank champagne by a bonfire. Harper read him a passage from the story she'd finally finished. A woman who loved fiercely and a man who finally let himself be loved. It was published in a literary magazine 2 weeks later. The editor called it a modern Cinderella story with teeth. Orion framed the first printed page and hung it in the sitting room across from the window where the sunlight hit it just right every morning. They spent their honeymoon in Tuscany, where Harper wrote in the mornings and Orion learned to cook pasta from a local chef who kept calling him Il Gigante Silenzioso. The Silent Giant. When they returned to New York, Harper's literary agent offered her a book deal. Orion surprised her with a home office, complete with a custom-built desk and a framed gold plaque. Harper Rhodes, author. She'd rolled her eyes, but secretly she loved it more than anything else he'd ever given her. Their life together wasn't perfect. There were late nights and missed trains, burnt toast and arguments over whose turn it was to take out the recycling, but there was also laughter. Passion, quiet mornings, long walks, constant growth, and love steady, earned, and real. The kind of love that didn't need grand gestures anymore because it had already weathered the storm. It had already chosen them again and again, and it always would.